The morning mist still clung to the Prussian countryside when Wilhelm Brenner first glimpsed the von Steinberg estate through the carriage window. May of 1873 had arrived wet and uncertain, much like everything else in these years following the war with France. The manor house rose from manicured grounds like a testament to old certainties, its Baroque facade neither welcoming nor forbidding, simply enduring. Wilhelm shifted his weight, favoring his good leg. The wound from Sedan still complained in damp weather, though he'd never mention it. A telegraph operator had no business dwelling on old battles when there were new wires to string, new connections to forge across this rapidly changing empire. Progress, he muttered, testing the word against the morning air. It tasted of copper and possibility. The carriage lurched to a stop before the servants' entrance. Through habit born of caution, Wilhelm counted the windows, noted the exits, observed the stable boy who watched with a particular wariness reserved for strangers. One learned to read a household's temperament from its edges inward. Inside his leather satchel lay the tools of his trade, pliers worn smooth by his grip, coils of copper wire, bottles of acid for the batteries, and most importantly, the precision instruments for testing electrical resistance. These objects had become extensions of his hands over the years, more reliable than promises, more honest than most men he'd known. The head footman who greeted him stood rigid as a telegraph pole. "Herr Brenner, the Baron expects you in his study." No pleasantries, then. Wilhelm had installed lines in enough noble houses to recognize the type, efficiency as a religion, courtesy as an afterthought. The study smelled of leather and barely contained impatience. Baron von Steinberg sat behind a desk that could have served as a battalion's dining table, his fingers drumming a rapid tattoo against its polished surface. 58 years had left their mark in the deep lines around his eyes, though the gaze itself remained sharp as a telegrapher's awl. "You come highly recommended," the Baron said without preamble. "The Junker estates near Danzig, the municipal building in Marienburg. They say you're discreet." Wilhelm inclined his head slightly. "A telegraph line is only as valuable as the privacy it maintains, Excellency." To his left, barely visible in the shadow of a bookshelf, stood another man. Secretary Hofmeister had the pallor of someone who lived between leather bindings and lamp oil, his nervous fingers constantly adjusting his wire-rimmed spectacles. Wilhelm had seen the type before. University men who carried their learning like armor against a world that valued birth over brilliance. "The line must run from here to the postal telegraph office in Königsberg," the Baron continued. 23 kilometers through forest and farmland. I've already secured the necessary permissions." He paused, his jaw tightening. "I trust you understand the delicate nature of my business correspondence. The recent expansions in industrial development require rapid communication." Translation: the Baron was speculating in railways and needed information faster than his competitors. Wilhelm kept his expression neutral. He'd learned long ago that understanding the powerful was far different from judging them. The work would take 6 weeks, perhaps 7 if the weather turned. As Wilhelm outlined the technical requirements, he noticed how Hofmeister leaned forward whenever electricity was mentioned, his eyes brightening with the peculiar enthusiasm of the self-educated. "Fascinating," the secretary murmured. "The invisible forces that connect us across vast distances. Almost spiritual in nature, wouldn't you say?" Wilhelm chose his words carefully. The forces are quite material, Herr Hofmeister. Copper and acid. Nothing more mysterious than that. Yet even as he spoke, he remembered nights in the field, listening to messages crackling across miles of wire, feeling oddly connected to unknown operators tapping out their lonely rhythms in distant cities. The Baron dismissed them both with a wave. In the corridor, Hofmeister lingered. "You were at Sedan, weren't you? I can tell by how you stand." Before Wilhelm could respond, the secretary continued, "I've been reading about electromagnetic phenomena. Some scholars in England believe electricity might serve as a conduit for energies we don't yet understand." "I stick to what I can measure, Herr Secretary," Wilhelm replied, though not unkindly. Every household had its dreamers. The servants' hall buzzed with the controlled chaos of a great house preparing for the day. Wilhelm was assigned quarters in the upper servants' floor, better than a field tent, certainly. As he unpacked his few possessions, a young man burst through the door, all eager energy and poorly contained excitement. "Herr Brenner, I'm Otto Kraus, assigned as your assistant." 22 years old, Wilhelm guessed, with the kind of enthusiasm that hadn't yet been tempered by disappointment. "I've been studying the telegraph manuals you sent ahead. The Morse system is poetry, isn't it? All human thought reduced to dots and dashes." Wilhelm suppressed a smile. Less poetry, more precision. One mistaken dash and sum becomes rum, turning a banking transaction into a tavern order. Through the window he spotted a figure in the kitchen garden, a woman gathering herbs, her movements efficient yet graceful. She paused, looking up at the sky as if reading weather signs, and Wilhelm found himself oddly transfixed by the simple competence of the gesture. Otto followed his gaze. "That's Anna Muller, works in the kitchen. Friendly enough, though she keeps to herself mostly." The boy's tone suggested he'd tried and failed to gain her attention. That evening, as Wilhelm sketched the preliminary route for the telegraph line, he thought about the strange democracy of electrical current. It flowed equally through noble estates and workers' cottages, indifferent to rank or privilege. Yet the messages it carried reinforced every division, every hierarchy. The work would be good here, honest. A line stretched between 2 points, reliable as mathematics. Whatever secrets it would eventually carry, whatever ambitions it would serve, the wire itself would remain neutral, a silent witness to human folly and aspiration alike. 2 weeks had passed since Wilhelm completed the connection. The telegraph line stretched across the countryside like a steel nerve, carrying the Baron's urgent correspondences about coal prices and railway shares. June 15th dawned clear and bright, the kind of morning that made even the Prussian landscape seem forgiving. Wilhelm had been checking the battery acids when old Heinrich, the night watchman, approached him with the peculiar sideways shuffle of someone bearing uncomfortable news. "Herr Brenner," Heinrich began, his weathered face creased with worry, "there's something irregular happening with the apparatus." Wilhelm set down his testing equipment. In his experience, irregular could mean anything from a mouse chewing through insulation to a complete system failure. He followed Heinrich to the Baron's study, where the telegraph key sat on its mahogany table like an altar to modernity. "It happens after midnight," Heinrich explained, his voice dropping as if the walls themselves might be listening. "Clicking sounds, but not like normal messages, random, almost like something trying to speak, but not knowing how." The rational part of Wilhelm's mind immediately catalogued possibilities. atmospheric interference, a loose connection creating intermittent contact, perhaps even settling in the building's structure, affecting the mounting. Yet Heinrich's unease was genuine, the kind that came from witnessing something that violated one's understanding of how things ought to work. Secretary Hofmeister materialized in the doorway, his pale face flushed with excitement. "You've told him about the manifestations?" The word hung in the air like incense smoke. "Manifestations?" Wilhelm kept his tone carefully neutral. "3 nights now," Hofmeister said, adjusting his spectacles with trembling fingers. "The apparatus activates on its own. I've transcribed what I could." He produced a notebook, pages covered with seemingly random letters. VERGESSEN. Then later, SCHULD. Last night, clearly, KOMMEN. Forgotten. Guilt. Coming. Wilhelm recognized the German words, though their arrangement made no conventional sense. His mind was already running through technical explanations, but Hofmeister continued before he could speak. "I've been reading the works of the American spiritualists. They claim electricity serves as a bridge between our world and the next. These could be attempts at communication from beyond the veil." Wilhelm noticed how Heinrich crossed himself, an old Catholic gesture in this Protestant household. Even in 1873, even with trains cutting through ancient forests and factories rising from meadows, the old fears persisted. Perhaps especially now, when so much changed so quickly that people grasped for any certainty, even supernatural ones. The Baron appeared in the doorway, still in his morning coat. "What's this about the telegraph acting up?" Hofmeister eagerly repeated his theory. Wilhelm watched the Baron's face carefully. Irritation, certainly, but also something else. Interest? In these competitive times, even the most rational industrialist might wonder if there were advantages to be gained from unexpected sources. "Fix it," the Baron ordered Wilhelm, though his eyes remained on Hofmeister. "I cannot have my business communications interrupted by whatever this is." Wilhelm spent the afternoon examining every component. The batteries showed proper acid levels, the connections were secure, the key mechanism operated smoothly. Otto helped him trace the line for the first 100 meters from the house, checking insulators and wire tension. "Do you think it could be true?" Otto asked, his young face eager for mystery. "Messages from the dead?" Wilhelm paused in his work. The boy reminded him of himself at that age, before Königgrätz, before Sedan, before he'd learned that the dead spoke only through absence. "The dead have no need of copper wire, Otto. The living, however, have endless need for deception." That evening, Wilhelm deliberately lingered in the kitchen, hoping to encounter Anna. She was kneading bread dough, her strong hands working the mass with practiced rhythm. He pretended to need hot water for cleaning equipment. "You're the telegraph man," she said without looking up. It wasn't a question. "Wilhelm Brenner," he offered. "I know who you are." She finally glanced at him, a slight smile playing at her lips. "The whole household knows. You're the one who's supposed to explain away Herr Hofmeister's ghosts." "You don't believe in them?" She shrugged. "I believe in what I can touch. Bread rises because of yeast, not spirits. Milk sours because of heat, not curses." She paused in her kneading. "Though I'll admit, the clicking sounds are unsettling. My room is just above the study." Their conversation was interrupted by Hofmeister himself, who burst into the kitchen with unusual energy. "Tonight," he announced to no one in particular, I shall conduct a proper séance. We'll see if these entities can communicate more clearly with focused spiritual energy." Wilhelm caught Anna rolling her eyes, though she quickly returned to her work when Hofmeister's gaze swept over her. The secretary departed as suddenly as he had arrived, leaving behind only the lingering scent of his pomade. "He means well," Anna said quietly. "Lost his wife 3 years ago to consumption. I suppose we all search for voices in the silence." That observation stayed with Wilhelm as he returned to his quarters. Otto was there, hunched over the estate's account ledger he'd borrowed, making calculations with increasing frustration. "Family matter," Otto explained, quickly closing the ledger. But Wilhelm had glimpsed enough: columns of figures, interest rates, the universal mathematics of debt. "If you'll need help with the calculations," Wilhelm offered. "It's nothing," Otto said too quickly. "Just checking some figures for my mother." Wilhelm didn't press. Every man deserved his private worries. Instead, he focused on the technical puzzle before him. If the telegraph was receiving messages, they had to originate somewhere. The question was whether that somewhere was as mystical as Hofmeister hoped, or as mundane as Wilhelm suspected. That night, he made his own vigil in the study, ignoring the séance Hofmeister conducted in the drawing room. Just after 1 in the morning, the telegraph key began its mysterious dance. Click, click, click. Pause. Click. Not random at all, Wilhelm realized. Deliberate, calculated. Someone, somewhere, was sending a message. The question was no longer if, but who and why. The séance had lasted until nearly dawn, according to the kitchen gossip Wilhelm overheard while adjusting the receiving mechanism. June 20th arrived, humid and depressive, the kind of weather that made the telegraph wires hum with atmospheric tension. Hofmeister hadn't slept. That much was obvious from his feverish eyes and the slight tremor in his usually precise handwriting as he showed Wilhelm his notes from the night's spiritual endeavors. "The planchette moved on its own," Hofmeister insisted, spreading papers across the Baron's desk. "7 witnesses, including the pastor's wife. The spirits are trying to communicate through both the telegraph and the séance board. The same words: forgotten, guilt, coming." Wilhelm examined the secretary's transcription of the telegraph signals. The timing was too regular, too deliberate. Real interference from atmospheric conditions created random patterns. This was intentional, though he kept that observation to himself while testing the apparatus's electrical resistance with his galvanometer. "Perhaps," Wilhelm suggested carefully, "we should consider more earthly explanations." "A crossed wire from another line, or—" "There are no other lines for 15 kilometers, Hofmeister interrupted. "I've checked the maps myself." He leaned closer, and Wilhelm caught the scent of sleeplessness and obsession. "My wife, she died in June, 3 years ago this week. What if she's trying to reach me?" The naked hope in the man's voice made Wilhelm uncomfortable. He'd seen grief take many forms in the war: rage, numbness, even strange euphoria. But this desperate grasping at impossibility seemed particularly cruel. Otto entered, carrying fresh batteries from the storage shed. The young man's usual cheerfulness seemed forced today, and Wilhelm noticed ink stains on his fingers, the mark of extensive correspondence. More letters about the family debt, no doubt. "Herr Hofmeister wants us to attend tonight's séance," Otto announced with poorly concealed excitement. "The whole household is invited." Wilhelm focused on connecting the new batteries, noting a slight irregularity in the acid concentration. "I'll be monitoring the telegraph tonight. Someone should observe whether the manifestations coincide with the séance activities." That afternoon, While tracing the wire through the estate grounds, Wilhelm encountered Anna gathering berries near the garden wall. She wore a simple gray dress, her hair pinned severely back. Yet something about her careful movements as she selected only the ripest fruit caught his attention. "Avoiding the spiritual gathering?" she asked without looking up. "Someone has to remain skeptical," Wilhelm replied, then surprised himself by adding, "Though I understand the appeal. Easier to believe in ghosts than in human cruelty." She straightened, studying him with those sharp brown eyes. "You've seen cruelty, then?" "The war?" "Among other places." He found himself telling her about a telegraph operator in Metz who had deliberately delayed crucial messages, causing a supply convoy to be ambushed. The living are quite capable of creating their own hauntings without supernatural assistance. "My mother is ill," Anna said suddenly, as if his honesty deserved reciprocation. "In the village. The doctor says it's her lungs, but doctors require payment." She returned to her berry picking with determined focus. "Forgive me. You didn't ask for my troubles." Wilhelm wanted to offer help, but knew the delicate pride of working people too well. Instead, he simply said, "The telegraph station in the village needs someone to transcribe messages twice a week. The work pays modestly but regularly, if you're interested." Her hands stilled among the berry bushes. "That's kind of you." Before he could respond, a commotion erupted from the main house. Through the windows, they could see Hofmeister gesticulating wildly, while the Baron's voice boomed in response. Wilhelm hurried inside, Anna following. The telegraph key was clicking rapidly, producing a stream of letters that Hofmeister transcribed with shaking hands. "SIEKOMMTMITTERNACHT. She comes at midnight." The Baron stood rigid, his face flushed. "This is disrupting my business correspondence. I had to send my factor to the post office in person today because I couldn't trust this damned machine." Wilhelm examined the apparatus while the argument continued. The electrical readings were bizarre, inconsistent voltage levels that shouldn't be possible with properly maintained batteries. He made minute adjustments to the receiving mechanism, his trained fingers detecting subtle vibrations in the metal components. That evening's séance drew most of the household. Even the skeptical stable hands lingered near the drawing room doors. Wilhelm remained in the study with his testing equipment, Otto reluctantly staying to assist, despite clearly wanting to join the séance. "Do you really think it's just mechanical failure?" Otto asked, organizing Wilhelm's tools with nervous energy. Wilhelm considered his answer. "I think people want to believe in mysteries, because the truth is often disappointingly mundane. But mundane doesn't mean simple." He showed Otto the voltage readings. These patterns suggest external interference, but not random. Someone with knowledge is involved. At precisely midnight, the telegraph erupted into activity. This time, instead of German words, it produced a series of numbers: 4, 7, 3, 9. Wilhelm transcribed carefully while Otto watched with wide eyes. From the drawing room came a shriek, one of the housemaids, Otto reported after investigating. The séance planchette had spelled out the same numbers. "How is that possible?" Otto whispered. Wilhelm studied the numbers, his mind working through possibilities. Either Hofmeister was orchestrating an elaborate deception, which seemed unlikely given his genuine distress, or someone was manipulating both the telegraph and the seance. But how could anyone access the telegraph line without his detecting it? "Tomorrow," Wilhelm told Otto, "we inspect every meter of wire between here and the village. Someone is playing games, and I intend to discover who." Later, as the household settled into uneasy sleep, Wilhelm walked the grounds, following the line of poles disappearing into the forest. The moon was new, leaving only starlight to navigate by. Somewhere in that darkness lay answers, he was certain. The dead didn't send telegraphs, but the living had endless capacity for deception. Near the forest edge, he heard footsteps and tensed, hand moving instinctively to the knife he always carried. But it was only Anna, wrapped in a shawl, apparently unable to sleep. "The seance upset everyone," she said quietly, "even those who claim not to believe." They stood together in comfortable silence, looking toward the dark trees where the telegraph line vanished. Wilhelm found himself thinking that some mysteries, like what drew him to this practical, sharp-eyed woman, were worth preserving. But the telegraph's secret messages demanded solving before Hofmeister's obsession or the Baron's anger caused real harm. June 25th brought unseasonable heat that made the pine resin weep from the trees like tears. Wilhelm started his inspection at dawn, before the sun could make the work unbearable. Otto carried the testing equipment, while Wilhelm examined each pole, each insulator, each span of wire stretching into the forest depths. The telegraph line cut through the ancient woodland like a scar of modernity, yet the forest seemed to be slowly claiming it back, moss already growing on the newer poles, birds building nests among the crossbars. 3 kilometers from the manor, Wilhelm noticed the first anomaly. The wire showed unusual wear patterns, tiny scratches in the copper that suggested repeated contact with something harder than bird claws or tree branches. He climbed the pole despite his bad leg's protests, examining the insulator closely. Fresh tool marks scored the ceramic. Someone had been here recently. Someone with knowledge and equipment. "Herr Brenner!" Otto called from below. "Someone's coming!" An old woodcutter emerged from the undergrowth, his axe carried loose in one gnarled hand. Wilhelm recognized him as Matthias, who supplied firewood to the estate. The man's eyes were sharp despite his 70-odd years, the kind of eyes that noticed everything and volunteered nothing. "Morning, Matthias," Wilhelm descended carefully. "You work this section often?" The woodcutter spat tobacco juice with practiced precision. "Most days. Baron pays me to keep the undergrowth clear from your poles." He paused, seeming to weigh his words. "Been others here, too. Night work by the looks of the boot prints." Wilhelm kept his expression neutral, though his pulse quickened. "Poachers? Poachers don't climb poles," Matthias replied dryly. "And they don't carry city boots. Saw them myself 2 nights past. 3 men, maybe 4. One knew his way around the poles like he'd put them up himself." Otto started to speak, but Wilhelm silenced him with a gesture. He pulled out his tobacco pouch, offering it to Matthias. Good tobacco was better than coins for loosening tongues. "They had tools," Matthias continued after filling his pipe. "Heard them talking about connections and resistance. Technical talk. One mentioned the Count's estate over the ridge." He pointed east, where the forest grew thicker. "That's all I know. I mind my own business, mostly." After Matthias departed, Wilhelm examined the area more carefully. Hidden beneath fallen needles, he found copper shavings, fresh ones. Someone had definitely tampered with the line here. He traced the wire's path visually, noting how it passed close to a massive oak tree, its branches creating a natural concealment. "Should we report this to the Baron?" Otto asked, his young face flushed with excitement and heat. Wilhelm considered. "Not yet. We need more than suspicions and wood shavings." He began climbing the oak, ignoring Otto's concerned protests about his leg. 20 feet up, concealed by summer foliage, he found what he was looking for. A secondary wire, thin as a watch spring, wrapped around the main cable. It ran along the tree trunk, disappearing into the forest toward Count von Raben's estate. The implications were staggering. Someone had effectively tapped into the Baron's private telegraph line, able to both intercept messages and send their own. The technical skill required suggested military training or professional experience. Wilhelm's mind raced through possibilities as he carefully descended. They followed the hidden wire for another kilometer before losing it in a creek bed. The work was expertly done. Whoever installed this knew how to hide their traces. Yet they'd been careless about the strange messages, almost as if they wanted them discovered. Returning to the estate as afternoon thunderclouds gathered, Wilhelm found the household in uproar. The Baron had received a telegram from his Berlin factors that made no sense. Numbers that didn't match any of his accounts, references to shipments he hadn't ordered. Hofmeister, meanwhile, insisted the spirits were growing stronger, their messages more urgent. In the servants' hall, Wilhelm overheard troubling gossip. The Count von Raben had been making inquiries about purchasing the Baron's estate, offering prices well below its value. The Count's aggressive business tactics were well known. He'd acquired 3 estates in the past 5 years, always after their owners suffered mysterious financial setbacks. Anna found Wilhelm in the workshop that evening, bringing him bread and beer. "You missed supper," she said simply, setting the tray beside his equipment. "I found something in the forest," he told her, trusting her practical sense. "Someone's intercepting the telegraph, but I can't understand their purpose with these ghost messages." She sat on a workbench, considering. Herr Hofmeister has influence with the Baron. If he were thought mad, obsessed with spirits? She trailed off, the implication clear. Of course, discredit the secretary, create chaos in the household, disrupt the Baron's business communications, all preparing the ground for a favorable purchase offer. Wilhelm felt foolish for not seeing it sooner. "There's a dance in the village tomorrow night," Anna said, changing the subject. "A midsummer celebration. I thought, that is, if you're not occupied with ghosts and conspiracies." "I'd like that," Wilhelm replied, surprised by how much he meant it. For a moment, the mystery of the telegraph seemed less urgent than the mystery of this woman's careful smile. Otto burst in, shattering the moment. "Herr Brenner, come quickly! The telegraph, it's going mad!" They rushed to the study where the key clattered like hail on a roof, producing streams of gibberish interspersed with coherent threats. "Leave, now, danger, midnight, death." Hofmeister stood transfixed, tears streaming down his pale face. "She's warning us. My wife is warning us of some terrible fate." The Baron appeared, still in his evening clothes, his face purple with rage. "Enough! I want this infernal machine removed. I'll go back to postal mail before I endure another night of this madness." Wilhelm realized the saboteur had overplayed their hand. The messages were too theatrical now, too obviously designed to frighten. Real ghosts, if they existed, surely had better things to do than issue melodramatic warnings. "Give me 3 more days, Excellency," Wilhelm requested formally. I believe I can solve your problem. The Baron studied him with those sharp eyes. 3 days, Brenner. Then either the ghosts are gone, or you are. As the household settled for the night, Wilhelm made his plans. Tomorrow, he would need to visit Count von Raben's estate under some pretext. The hidden wire led there, he was certain. And somewhere in that noble house was a man who understood telegraphy well enough to orchestrate this elaborate deception. The storm that had threatened all day finally broke, rain hammering the windows like urgent messages from the sky. The first day of July arrived with crystalline clarity, the kind of morning that made the previous week's storms seem like fever dreams. Wilhelm had spent the night preparing his equipment, modifying a portable galvanometer to detect even the faintest electrical currents. If someone was tapping into the Baron's telegraph line, he would find the exact point of connection. Otto met him at the workshop before dawn, carrying a suspicious letter he'd been trying to hide. The young man's face showed the strain of sleepless nights, and Wilhelm finally addressed what he'd been observing for days. "How much does your family owe?" Wilhelm asked directly, setting aside pretense. Otto's shoulders sagged with relief at not having to maintain the deception. 300 marks. My father borrowed it for seed grain 2 years ago, before he died. The interest, he shook his head. It doubles every 6 months. The creditor says he'll have me arrested for fraud if we don't pay by month's end. Wilhelm did quick calculations. It was more than Otto could earn in 2 years, even with steady work. "Focus on today's task," he said, not unkindly. "Other problems have a way of solving themselves when we're not looking directly at them." They returned to the forest, this time equipped with climbing spikes and additional testing equipment. The hidden wire Wilhelm had discovered yesterday had to connect to the main line somewhere, and that connection point would reveal everything. They worked methodically, testing every meter, checking voltage drops that might indicate a parallel circuit. At the 10th pole from the manor, Wilhelm's modified galvanometer suddenly showed unusual readings. He climbed carefully, mindful of his bad leg, while Otto steadied the pole. Hidden beneath a legitimate insulator was a masterpiece of deception, a secondary connection so expertly crafted it was nearly invisible. The joining had been soldered with precision, then painted to match the original wire's patina. "Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing," Wilhelm muttered, carefully exposing the connection. The work was military quality, the kind taught in the Prussian Signal Corps. His suspicions were crystallizing into certainty. Following the hidden wire through the forest canopy required all their skill. It ran tree to tree, supported by small ceramic insulators painted bark brown, virtually invisible from the ground. The installation must have taken weeks, done piece by piece, under cover of legitimate maintenance work. 3 hours later, they emerged at the edge of Count von Raben's estate. The wire disappeared into a maintenance shed near the main house, the kind of building that servants rarely entered, and nobles never noticed. Wilhelm observed the scene through his field glasses, noting the single window, the new lock on the door, the fresh path worn in the grass suggesting regular nighttime visits. "We can't just walk onto the Count's property," Otto whispered nervously. Wilhelm had already considered this. "No, but we can follow where the messages go." He produced a small device from his pack, a telegraph key modified to work as a listening device. If we splice this into their connection, we can hear what they're sending without them knowing. The work was delicate, requiring steady hands despite the risk of discovery. Every sound from the estate made Otto flinch, but Wilhelm remained focused, years of battlefield experience having taught him to separate real threats from imagined ones. Within 20 minutes, they had their tap in place, concealed in a hollow tree trunk. That evening, back at the Baron's estate, Wilhelm set up his listening post in the workshop. He'd told no one except Anna about his discovery, trusting her discretion more than he probably should. She brought him supper, then surprised him by staying. "The household is in chaos," she reported. "Hofmeister hasn't eaten in 2 days, just sits in his study writing letters to spiritualist societies. The Baron's threatening to dismiss half the staff if the disturbances continue." At precisely 9 o'clock, Wilhelm's equipment came alive. Someone was transmitting from the Count's estate, and this time, Wilhelm could hear both sides of the conversation. The coding was amateur but effective, a simple substitution cipher that took him only minutes to crack. "Package proceeding as planned," the first message read. "Secretary nearly broken. Baron's resistance weakening." The response came from somewhere else, probably the town. "Increase pressure. Final offer ready. Must complete before autumn contracts." Wilhelm transcribed everything, his anger growing with each word. This wasn't just sabotage. It was a coordinated campaign to destroy a man's business and another man's sanity, all for profit. He thought of Hofmeister's genuine grief being manipulated, of the Baron's lifetime of work being undermined. "Can you prove who's sending these?" Anna asked, reading over his shoulder. "Not yet. I need to catch them in the act. Identify the operator." He paused, struck by a sudden thought. "The midsummer dance in the village. Is Count von Raben attending?" Anna nodded. "He always does. Makes a show of mixing with common folk, though everyone knows he's just there to remind us who owns half the county." A plan began forming in Wilhelm's mind. If the Count attended the dance, his estate would be less guarded. And if the mysterious telegraph operator was among the Count's staff, they might seize the opportunity to send more ghost messages while their master was away. Otto returned from the main house with troubling news. "A man came to see the Baron today. Said he represented a consortium interested in purchasing the estate. The Baron threw him out, but Hofmeister seemed almost relieved. I heard him say something about leaving this cursed place." The pieces were falling into place. Tomorrow night, during the village celebration, Wilhelm would position himself at the Count's estate. He would identify the false telegraph operator and gather the proof needed to expose this conspiracy. The risk was considerable. Trespassing on a noble's property could mean prison or worse, but the alternative was watching good people destroyed by greed. "I'll help," Anna said quietly. "I know the Count's kitchen staff. I can get you information about the household routines." Wilhelm wanted to refuse, to keep her safe from this danger, but he recognized the determined set of her jaw. "Just information," he agreed, "nothing more." As midnight approached, Wilhelm's equipment detected another transmission from the Count's estate. This one was different. Practice runs of Morse code, someone drilling basic patterns. The operator was training someone else, preparing them for something. July 8th came wrapped in anticipation. The entire village buzzed with preparation for the evening's midsummer dance, though Wilhelm's mind was fixed on the darker purpose the celebration would serve. He spent the morning creating a portable observation kit, field glasses, a muffled lantern, and most importantly, a small telegraph key that could tap into the hidden line without alerting the operator. Anna had done her work well. Through her connections with the Count's kitchen staff, she'd learned that a certain Klaus Dietrich, the Count's personal assistant, had been keeping unusual hours. He'd been seen entering the maintenance shed after midnight, always carrying a leather satchel. More tellingly, he'd served in the Prussian Telegraph Corps during the war, in the same division Wilhelm had, though their paths hadn't crossed. Dietrich applied for Hofmeister's position 2 years ago, Anna revealed, having gleaned this from gossipy parlor maids. The Baron rejected him for being too ambitious, too eager to please nobility rather than serve honestly. The pieces clicked into place with satisfying precision. A trained telegraph operator with a grudge, now in position to serve a count who wanted the Baron's estate. Wilhelm felt the familiar satisfaction of a problem yielding to logic, though it was tempered by disgust at the cruelty of the scheme. Otto appeared at the workshop door, his face drawn with fresh worry. "My creditor is here at the estate. He says he won't leave without payment or a pledge of property." The young man's hands shook slightly. "I have nothing to pledge except my mother's cottage." Wilhelm made a decision that surprised him with its swiftness. "Tell him to wait until tomorrow evening. His debt will be addressed." He had savings, accumulated over years of careful work. 300 marks would hurt, but not ruin him. Strange how clarity about what mattered came at unexpected moments. As evening approached, the estate emptied. Even the Baron departed for the celebration, maintaining the social obligations that bound even the nobility. Hofmeister remained, too lost in his spiritual researches to notice the earthly festivities. Wilhelm watched from his window as carriages rolled toward the village, carrying away most of the household. He'd told Otto to attend the dance to maintain normal appearances. The boy had resisted, wanting to help, but Wilhelm knew this work required solitude and concentration. Some battles were fought better alone, without the burden of protecting others. By 10 o'clock, Wilhelm was positioned in the forest near Count von Raben's maintenance shed. The building stood isolated, a perfect location for clandestine activities. Through his field glasses, he watched Klaus Dietrich arrive, looking nervously over his shoulder before unlocking the shed door. The man was tall, thin, with the kind of nervous energy that suggested ambition constantly at war with caution. Wilhelm circled through the woods, approaching from the blind side of the building. Through a crack in the wall, he could see inside, a complete telegraph setup, professional quality, connected to the stolen wire. Dietrich was seated at the table, a code book open beside him, preparing his transmission. The message Dietrich sent was masterful in its psychological cruelty. "Friedrich, why did you let me die? The fever took me while you counted your money. I cannot rest. You must atone." Wilhelm realized with cold fury that Dietrich had researched Hofmeister's dead wife, knew she'd died of typhoid while the secretary was traveling on the Baron's business. The precision of the emotional manipulation was surgical, designed to destroy a grieving man's sanity. Moving silently despite his bad leg, Wilhelm reached his predetermined position, where the hidden wire ran close to the ground. He attached his listening device, then did something more. He spliced in his own key, giving himself the ability to interrupt or modify messages. Years of field experience had taught him that sometimes the best weapon was the enemy's own tools turned against them. Dietrich continued transmitting for an hour, alternating between ghostly messages and coded communications with associates in town. Wilhelm recorded everything in his notebook, building an undeniable record of the conspiracy. He learned that Count von Raben planned to make his final offer for the estate within the week, expecting the Baron to capitulate after his secretary's complete breakdown. Near midnight, something unexpected happened. Dietrich began training someone else through the telegraph itself. The new operator was clumsy, their Morse uncertain, but Dietrich patiently corrected each mistake. They were expanding their operation, Wilhelm realized, planning to target other estates with the same scheme. Wilhelm made his choice. Using his spliced connection, he began sending his own message, overriding Dietrich's transmission. In perfect Morse, he tapped out, "Klaus Dietrich is a fraud. Check the maintenance shed. Count von Raben knows." Inside the shed, he heard Dietrich's chair crash over as the man leaped to his feet. Through the crack, Wilhelm watched him frantically checking connections, his face pale with terror. The conspirator grabbed his equipment and fled, leaving behind the code book in his haste. Wilhelm waited until Dietrich's footsteps faded, then entered the shed. The code book was a treasure trove, names, dates, financial arrangements, all in Dietrich's precise handwriting. Even more damning, there were drafts of the ghostly messages, complete with corrections and improvements. No court would doubt this evidence. He photographed several pages using a small camera he'd borrowed from the Baron's library, then carefully returned everything to its original position except the code book, which he took. Let Dietrich panic about its loss. The journey back through the forest was tense, every shadow potentially hiding discovery. But Wilhelm's luck held, and he reached the Baron's estate as the first carriages returned from the dance. Anna was among the returning servants, her face lighting with relief when she saw him safe. "It's done," he told her quietly. "I have what we need." She surprised him by briefly taking his hand, her touch warm and reassuring. "Otto's creditor is still here, drinking in the servants' hall. He's telling everyone the boy's family are thieves and liars." Wilhelm's jaw tightened. One more score to settle before dawn. He went to his room, retrieved a leather pouch heavy with coins, and found the creditor, a fat merchant from town whose prosperity clearly came from others' misfortune. "Otto Kraus's debt is paid," Wilhelm announced, counting out the marks with deliberate precision. "In full, with interest. You'll provide a receipt and never darken this estate again." The merchant's eyes glittered with greed and disappointment. He'd clearly hoped to acquire the cottage. But money was money, and he couldn't refuse legal payment. The morning of July 15th found Wilhelm in the estate's library, surrounded by newspapers, commercial registers, and correspondence he'd quietly borrowed from the Baron's files. The code book taken from Dietrich's shed had provided names and dates, but Wilhelm needed context to understand the full scope of the conspiracy. Otto assisted, his gratitude over the paid debt translating into fierce loyalty and meticulous research. "Look at this," Otto said, pointing to a newspaper from 3 months past. "Count von Raben purchased the Steinfeld estate after Baron Steinfeld suffered a nervous collapse. The Baron claimed someone was poisoning his wells, but no evidence was found." Wilhelm cross-referenced this with Dietrich's notebook. There it was, coded references to the Steinfeld project with payment notations. The ghost messages were just the latest evolution of a broader campaign of psychological warfare designed to break estate owners. Through careful investigation, Wilhelm pieced together Klaus Dietrich's history. The man had indeed served in the Telegraph Corps, earning commendations for his technical skill. After the war, he'd applied to several estates for positions, always rejected for being too eager, too obviously ambitious. Count von Raben had hired him 18 months ago, officially as a secretary, but clearly for darker purposes. Anna entered the library with coffee and fresh bread, having convinced the cook that Wilhelm and Otto were performing urgent maintenance. She'd become their informal intelligence gatherer, her position in the kitchen giving her access to gossip from every level of the household. "Hofmeister didn't come down for breakfast again," she reported. "But I heard something interesting. The Count is planning a hunting party next week. He's invited the district magistrate, the police chief, and several other nobles who've been considering selling their estates." Wilhelm understood immediately. The hunting party would provide cover for negotiations, away from curious eyes and ears. If the Baron could be convinced to sell before then, Count von Raben would have his triumph to announce to influential witnesses. The investigation revealed something else. Dietrich hadn't acted alone.
The coded messages referenced a partner in town, someone who handled the financial aspects, while Dietrich managed the technical sabotage. Following paper trails through receipts and telegrams, Wilhelm identified him as Heinrich Müller, a speculator who'd arrived in the district 6 months ago, claiming to represent Berlin interests. "We should tell the Baron immediately," Otto urged, his young face flushed with indignation. Wilhelm shook his head. "Not yet. Dietrich knows someone discovered his operation. He'll be desperate, likely to make mistakes. We watch and wait." That afternoon, while supposedly checking the telegraph line, Wilhelm observed Dietrich arrive at the estate with Count von Raben. The Count was all smooth courtesy, expressing concern about the Baron's troubles and offering assistance. Dietrich stayed silent, but Wilhelm noticed how his eyes constantly scanned the surroundings, looking for threats. In the Baron's study, Wilhelm could hear the conversation through the window he'd deliberately left cracked open. The Count was subtle, never directly offering to buy the estate, instead lamenting the difficulties of managing property in these modern times, and mentioning how he'd helped other nobles by taking their burdens. "Your secretary seems unwell," the Count observed with false sympathy. "These obsessions with the supernatural can destroy a man's mind. I've seen it before." The Baron's response was sharp. "Hofmeister has served me faithfully for 7 years. I don't abandon loyal servants at the first sign of trouble." Yet Wilhelm heard the doubt in the Baron's voice. The constant disruptions, the failed business communications, Hofmeister's increasing instability, all were taking their toll. That evening, Wilhelm set his trap. He used the hidden telegraph connection to send a message to Müller in town, imitating Dietrich's style. "Urgent meeting required. Evidence compromised. Bring all documents. Midnight, Old Mill." The Old Mill stood abandoned halfway between the estate and town, a perfect location for clandestine meetings. Wilhelm positioned himself there early, Otto hidden as backup, despite Wilhelm's orders to stay away. The boy's courage exceeded his judgment, but Wilhelm couldn't help feeling grateful for the support. Müller arrived first, a nervous man carrying a heavy satchel. Dietrich appeared minutes later, confused and agitated. Their conversation, which Wilhelm recorded using a mechanical memorandum device he'd borrowed from the Baron's collection, was damning. "I didn't send for you," Dietrich hissed. "Then who?" Müller began, before understanding dawned. "We're discovered." "It doesn't matter," Dietrich said with desperate bravado. "The Baron will break within days.
Hofmeister grows madder each night. Even if someone suspects, they can't prove anything without... He stopped, patting his pockets frantically. The code book. Where's my code book? Wilhelm stepped from concealment, holding the leather-bound volume. Looking for this? Both men froze. Dietrich's hand moved toward his coat, but Wilhelm had already noted the bulge of a pistol. I wouldn't, Wilhelm said calmly. My assistant has already gone for the constable, though I doubt we'll need him. You're both intelligent men. You know when a game is finished. Muller broke first, the satchel falling from nerveless fingers. It was all Dietrich's idea. I just handled the money. I never meant... Shut up, you fool! Dietrich snarled, but his face showed defeat. The code book contained enough evidence to ruin them both. What followed was negotiation rather than confrontation. Wilhelm had no interest in scandal that would damage the Baron's reputation or destroy the Count's position. Such upheaval would harm everyone, including innocent servants. Instead, he proposed terms. Dietrich and Muller would leave Prussia immediately. The Count would cease all attempts to acquire the Baron's estate, and substantial compensation would be paid to both Hofmeister and the Baron for damages suffered. Why should we agree? Dietrich asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. Wilhelm opened the code book, showing pages of evidence. Because the alternative is public disgrace, criminal prosecution, and the ruin of everything you've built. Count von Raben won't protect you once this becomes public. You know how the nobility treats servants who embarrass them. The threat was effective. Within an hour, Wilhelm had written confessions from both men, though he agreed to keep them sealed unless the terms were violated. The money, 5,000 marks, would be delivered to the estate within 2 days, ostensibly as payment for consulting services. As the conspirators departed into the night, Otto emerged from hiding, his face glowing with admiration. You let them go? After everything they did? Wilhelm considered his answer. Justice isn't always about punishment, Otto. Sometimes it's about restoration. Hofmeister will recover once the messages stop. The Baron's business will stabilize. And those two will spend their lives looking over their shoulders, wondering when their crimes might catch up with them. That's punishment enough. July 22nd dawned gray and oppressive, matching Wilhelm's mood as he prepared for the final act of his carefully orchestrated counter-deception. The confessions obtained at the mill were secure, but Wilhelm knew that paper victories rarely held against noble influence. He needed something more definitive, something that would protect the Baron and Hofmeister even after he left the estate. In his workshop, Wilhelm modified the telegraph equipment one last time. Using techniques learned during the war, he created a recording device, a cylinder covered in lampblack that would capture the physical impressions of telegraph signals. If Dietrich attempted any final sabotage before fleeing, Wilhelm would have indisputable mechanical proof. Otto burst in, breathless with news. Dietrich is back at the estate. He's with Count von Raben in the Baron's study. They're pressing for an immediate sale. This violated their agreement from the mill, but Wilhelm had expected as much. Desperate men rarely honor agreements made under duress. He activated his recording device and hurried to the main house, where he could observe the study through the servants' corridor. The Count's voice carried through the walls, smooth as oil over steel. My dear Baron, I come as a friend. Your troubles are known throughout the district. The mysterious telegraph failures, your secretary's unfortunate condition. No one would blame you for seeking a quieter life. Through a crack in the door, Wilhelm saw Hofmeister slumped in a chair, his face gaunt from weeks of sleepless nights and spiritual torment. The Baron stood rigid by the window, pride warring with exhaustion on his weathered features. "I have prepared a generous offer," the Count continued, producing documents. "Enough to establish yourself comfortably in Berlin, away from these rural anxieties." Dietrich stood silent in the corner, but Wilhelm noticed his fingers tapping against his leg, Morse code. He was signaling someone. Wilhelm slipped away, returning to his workshop where the telegraph key was already clattering. His recording device captured every pulse as a new message arrived. "Final pressure now, maximum disturbance, make them break." Perfect.
Wilhelm had the evidence he needed, but he wanted more. He wanted to expose the conspiracy in a way that would restore Hofmeister's reputation and strengthen the Baron's position. He began transmitting his own message, overriding the incoming signal with something far different. In the study, the Baron had just reached for the Count's pen when Hofmeister suddenly straightened. "Listen!" The secretary rushed to the telegraph key in the corner, which had begun its familiar clicking. But instead of ghostly messages, it was transmitting something else entirely. "Dietrich is a fraud," the message read. "Check his coat pocket. He carries evidence of deception. Count von Raben knows all." Dietrich went white, his hand moving instinctively to his pocket, where, unbeknownst to him, Wilhelm had planted a damning document during their confrontation at the mill. A practice sheet of the ghostly messages in Dietrich's own handwriting. The Baron's reaction was swift. "Seize him," he commanded the footman who always stood ready outside his study. What followed was chaos, carefully controlled by Wilhelm's preparation. As the footman grabbed Dietrich, the man's coat tore, spilling papers across the floor, the practice messages, coded communications with Muller, even a receipt for copper wire purchased in quantity. The Count tried to maintain innocence, but his association with Dietrich was too well documented. Wilhelm entered the study at precisely the right moment, carrying his recording device. "Excellency, I believe I can explain everything." He demonstrated how the cylinder had captured the recent transmissions, showing the physical proof of external tampering. Then, with clinical precision, he explained the entire conspiracy: the hidden wire, the false messages, the systematic campaign to destroy the Baron's stability. Hofmeister wept openly, but they were tears of relief rather than despair. Not spirits, then. "Not my wife trying to communicate?" "No," Wilhelm said gently. "Just cruel men exploiting your grief for profit." The Count attempted to leave, but the Baron's voice stopped him cold. "You'll stay until the district magistrate arrives. We have much to discuss about your business practices." As the local authorities were summoned, Wilhelm supervised the complete removal of the hidden wire system. Dietrich, seeing his ruin complete, made one last desperate attempt. "You have no real proof. It's my word against a common tradesman." Wilhelm produced the sealed confessions from the mill. "Your word? You already gave that, in writing." He turned to the Baron. "These documents detail everything, Excellency, though I suggest using them quietly, to avoid scandal that might affect the estate's reputation." The Baron understood. Public prosecution would create the kind of spectacle that helped no one. Instead, private justice would be served. Dietrich and the Count would face social and financial ruin, but quietly, allowing the estate to recover without becoming a source of district gossip. That evening, as Dietrich was escorted away and the Count retreated to his estate to salvage what he could of his reputation, Wilhelm found himself in the unusual position of being summoned to dine with the Baron, not in the servants' hall, but in the main dining room.
"You've saved more than my estate," the Baron said, raising his glass. "You've saved my faith in competent men. Name your reward." Wilhelm thought of Otto, whose debt was already paid, of Anna, whose mother had received medical care, of Hofmeister, whose sanity had been restored. "My regular fee is sufficient, Excellency, though if you're looking for a new secretary, Otto Kraus has shown excellent aptitude with numbers and letters." The Baron smiled, the first genuine warmth Wilhelm had seen from him. "Consider it done." "And Hofmeister? He'll need time to recover from this ordeal." "He'll recover stronger," Wilhelm predicted. "Men who face their demons and discover them false often do." Later, in the servants' hall, the atmosphere was celebratory. The mysterious hauntings had been explained, the household's stability restored. Otto was speechless at his promotion to assistant secretary, a position that would secure his family's future. Anna approached Wilhelm as he packed his equipment, her usual reserve softened by the day's revelations. "You could have demanded much more from the Baron," she observed. "Why didn't you?" Wilhelm considered his answer. "Because fixing things, telegraph lines, broken situations, damaged trust, that's reward enough. The rest is just copper and acid, nothing mysterious about it." She smiled at his echo of their first conversation. "Will you stay for the Harvest Festival?" "It's next month, and the estate owes you a proper celebration." "I have another assignment," Wilhelm admitted. "A factory in Essen needs a telegraph system installed." "But," he paused, surprising himself with the words, "I'll return when it's complete, if that would be welcome." Her answer came not in words, but in a brief touch of her hand on his, a connection more electric than any telegraph current. In that moment, Wilhelm understood that some messages didn't require wires or codes. They transmitted through simpler, more ancient means, and were all the more powerful for their directness. The morning of July 24th broke clear and bright, as if nature itself celebrated the resolution of the estate's troubles. Wilhelm stood in the Baron's study, the same room where mysterious cliques had once driven Hofmeister to the edge of madness. Now it felt merely like what it was, a workspace where commerce and correspondence flowed in ordinary rhythms. The Baron sat behind his massive desk, reviewing the documents Wilhelm had prepared. Every detail of the conspiracy was laid out with mathematical precision, though Wilhelm had been careful to frame events in a way that minimized scandal. The official story would be that Count von Raben had discovered his assistant's unauthorized activities and dismissed him, a fiction that preserved everyone's dignity while ensuring justice. 5,000 marks in compensation, the Baron mused, reading the agreement. Split between myself and Hofmeister. Generous, considering they could face criminal charges. Wilhelm nodded. Count von Raben was eager to avoid publicity. His banks in Berlin wouldn't appreciate knowing he'd engaged in estate fraud. The money is already transferred. I confirmed with your banker this morning. Hofmeister entered, looking better than he had in weeks. Sleep and relief had begun repairing the damage of his spiritual torment. He carried a tea service, having insisted on serving, despite the Baron's protests. Some habits, Wilhelm understood, provided comfort through their familiarity. I owe you an apology, Herr Brenner, Hofmeister said, setting down the tray with steady hands. I was so eager to believe in communication from beyond that I became blind to earthly deception. Grief makes us all susceptible to what we wish were true, Wilhelm replied. The criminals counted on that very human weakness. The Baron stood, walking to the window that overlooked his estate. "What I don't understand is how you knew to look for a physical cause. Most would have dismissed it as mechanical failure or accepted Hofmeister's spiritual explanation." Wilhelm chose his words carefully. "In the war, we often intercepted enemy communications. The French would try various deceptions, false messages, ghost signals to confuse our operators. I learned that the more theatrical a deception, the more likely it concealed mundane motives. Ghosts don't need telegraph wires, but fraud does." A knock interrupted them. Otto entered, wearing his new assistant secretary clothes awkwardly, like armor that didn't quite fit. "Excellency, Count von Raben has arrived. He requests a private audience." The Baron glanced at Wilhelm, who nodded slightly. They'd expected this. "Show him in, but you'll remain, Otto. You should learn how gentlemen handle delicate matters." Count von Raben entered with none of his usual swagger. At 63, he suddenly looked his age, the lines on his face deeper, his bearing diminished. He nodded stiffly to the Baron, ignored Hofmeister, and regarded Wilhelm with a mixture of respect and resentment. "I've come to ensure our understanding remains intact," the Count said. "My former assistant has left for America. His companion Mueller has likewise departed." "They won't trouble you again." "And your attempts to acquire estates through sabotage?" the Baron asked coldly. The Count's jaw tightened. "I've reconsidered my expansion plans. My current holdings require my full attention." He produced a leather folder. "As agreed, documentation that eliminates any future claims on your estate or others in the district." Wilhelm examined the papers, legally binding, properly witnessed. The Count had been thorough, probably on advice from lawyers who'd explained his precarious position. Blackmail was a crime regardless of noble status, and the evidence Wilhelm possessed could destroy him. "One more thing," the Count said, his pride visibly struggling with necessity. "My nephew serves in the Telegraph Corps. He's competent, honest, nothing like Dietrich. If you could see your way to recommending him for civilian positions..." The Baron looked to Wilhelm, who considered. "Have him write to me in Essen. If his skills match his uncle's claims, I'll consider it. Everyone deserves judgment on their own merits." The Count departed without ceremony, his carriage wheels raising dust that settled slowly in the morning sun. The threat was over. But Wilhelm knew the Baron would never fully trust his neighbors again. Such was the price of discovered deception. It poisoned wells that time only partially purified. That afternoon, Wilhelm conducted his final inspection of the telegraph line. Otto accompanied him, eager to understand the technical aspects of his new responsibilities. They walked the forest path where Wilhelm had first discovered the hidden wire, now removed and coiled in the workshop as evidence. "Will you teach me to operate the telegraph properly?" Otto asked. "I know the basics, but I want to master it as you have." Wilhelm demonstrated the proper grip, the rhythm of clean transmission. The key is consistency. Each operator develops their own fist, their signature style. With practice, you can recognize who's sending just by their rhythm. They paused at the great oak where the illegal connection had been concealed. Anna was there, gathering mushrooms that grew in the shade. She straightened when she saw them, her basket nearly full of summer's bounty. "The kitchen is preparing a farewell dinner," she told Wilhelm. The Baron insisted. "Even the stable boys are invited. He says the entire estate shares in this victory." Wilhelm felt an unexpected tightness in his chest. He'd grown comfortable here, despite the mystery and danger, or perhaps because of it. Problems that could be solved through observation and logic were infinitely preferable to the ambiguous challenges of ordinary life. "Your mother?" Wilhelm asked Anna. "She's recovering?" "Much better. The doctor you arranged, he knew treatments the local physician hadn't considered. She'll need continued care, but—" Anna paused, meeting his eyes directly.
"The Baron's compensation to Hofmeister. The secretary's already told me he's sharing part with the staff who suffered during the disturbances. It's enough for my mother's medicine for a year." As evening approached, the estate transformed. Tables were set in the garden, lanterns hung from trees, and the kitchen produced dishes normally reserved for noble guests. Wilhelm found himself seated between Hofmeister and Anna, with Otto across from them, still adjusting his new collar. The Baron stood to address the gathering. "We've weathered an attack, not on our walls, but on our peace of mind. We prevailed because we had the wisdom to trust expertise over superstition, investigation over assumption." He raised his glass toward Wilhelm. "To our telegraph operator, who reminded us that the greatest mysteries often have the simplest solutions." Wilhelm stood reluctantly, uncomfortable with public praise. "The solution was only possible because everyone played their part." Otto's dedication, Hofmeister's detailed records, Anna's household intelligence, even old Matthias noting strangers in the forest. A telegraph works because all components function together. So does an estate. Later, as the celebration continued around them, Wilhelm walked with Anna through the garden. The summer evening was perfect, warm without oppression, the air sweet with night-blooming flowers. They could hear Otto enthusiastically explaining telegraph principles to anyone who'd listen, his youth making expertise charming rather than pedantic. "When will you leave?" Anna asked. "Tomorrow afternoon. The Essen factory can't wait longer." She was quiet for a moment. "You'll return for the harvest festival?" "I promised, didn't I?" Wilhelm reached into his pocket, producing a small device. "This is a practice key. If Otto connects it to the main line, which he can do without affecting regular transmissions, you could learn Morse code. We could correspond." Anna took the device, her fingers exploring its mechanical simplicity. "Dots and dashes instead of letters?" "Sometimes," Wilhelm said, "the most important messages don't need many words." August 10th arrived with the peculiar bitter-sweetness of summer's end approaching. Wilhelm stood in the workshop one final time, his tools packed, his contracts complete. The morning sun slanted through the windows, illuminating motes of dust that danced like memories in the golden light. 3 weeks had passed since the conspiracy's unraveling, and the estate had settled into a new rhythm, calmer, more certain, yet somehow fuller than before. He ran his fingers over the telegraph key one last time. The apparatus that had once transmitted ghostly deceptions now carried only ordinary business, wool prices, railway schedules, the mundane poetry of commerce. Otto had become proficient at operation, his natural enthusiasm tempered by precision. The young man entered now, carrying a sealed message that had just arrived. "From Essen," Otto said, though his tone suggested he knew the contents. "They're asking about your expected arrival date." Wilhelm decoded the message quickly. The factory needed him by week's end. Their expansion couldn't wait longer. Progress, that relentless god of the new Germany, demanded its tributes of wire and work. He folded the telegram carefully,
adding it to his collection of papers, contracts, recommendations, the evidence of a life spent connecting distant points. Hofmeister appeared in the doorway, looking healthier than Wilhelm had ever seen him. The secretary had gained weight, color had returned to his cheeks, and most importantly, his eyes had lost that haunted quality that spiritual obsession brings. "I wanted to thank you once more," Hofmeister said, offering his hand. "Not just for exposing the deception, but for how you did it. You could have made me look the fool, could have exposed my gullibility to everyone. Instead, you preserved my dignity while revealing the truth." Wilhelm shook the offered hand firmly. "We all have our moments of weakness, Herr Secretary. Yours came from love and loss. Dietrich's came from envy and ambition. One deserves compassion, the other consequences." They stood in comfortable silence, watching Otto test the morning's connections. The young man's promotion had transformed him. Gone was the nervous boy worried about family debts, replaced by someone growing into responsibility. His family's cottage was secure, his mother's fears eased. Sometimes, Wilhelm reflected, solving one problem created ripples that solved others. "I've been thinking," Hofmeister said, "about the nature of communication. We believed the telegraph could carry messages from the dead, but in a way, doesn't all writing do that?"
These business communications will outlive us all, carrying our words forward when we're gone. Perhaps that's immortality enough. Before Wilhelm could respond, Anna entered carrying a basket. "From the kitchen," she said simply, though her eyes said more. "Bread, cheese, summer sausage. The journey to Essen is long." Wilhelm accepted the basket, noting the weight of it, more than one man could eat, provisioned as if she expected him to share it with someone, or to remember where it came from with each meal. Their hands touched briefly in the transfer, a connection that sent signals no telegraph could carry. "I've been practicing," Anna said, producing the practice key he'd given her. Her fingers moved across it with surprising fluency, tapping out a message. Wilhelm translated automatically. "Until autumn returns," he responded on the main key, his transmission clean and clear. "Distance is only time between meetings." Otto pretended to be deeply absorbed in checking battery acid levels, giving them the privacy of ignored presence. Outside, they could hear the estate stirring, horses being led to pasture, servants beginning their daily tasks, the Baron's voice calling for his morning correspondence. Life continuing in its ancient patterns, barely disturbed by the modern intrusion of electrical communication. The Baron himself appeared, dressed for riding but taking time for farewell. "Herr Brenner, you've earned more than payment here. You've earned reputation. I've already written to 3 associates who need telegraph installations. They'll contact you in Essen." Wilhelm bowed slightly. "I appreciate your recommendation, Excellency." "It's not charity," the Baron said sharply, though not unkindly. "It's commerce. I invest in what proves valuable, and you've proven more valuable than any wire or battery. You saw through deception that fooled us all, yet handled it with discretion. That's worth more than technical skill." The carriage arrived, the same one that had brought Wilhelm to the estate weeks ago. As his equipment was loaded, various servants appeared to say goodbye. The stable boy who'd watched him suspiciously that first day now offered a shy wave. The cook pressed another package of food into his hands. Old Heinrich, the night watchman, nodded with quiet respect. As the carriage pulled away, Wilhelm looked back at the estate. From this distance, he could see the telegraph lines stretching into the forest, those copper nerves that had carried so much deception and were now purified into simple utility.
Otto stood at the workshop window, already returning to his duties. Hofmeister watched from the library, perhaps composing letters about earthly rather than spiritual matters.
And Anna stood in the garden where they'd walked, her hand raised in farewell, the morning sun catching the copper highlights in her dark hair. Wilhelm raised his own hand, a gesture that needed no code to translate. The journey to Essen took 2 days, long enough for reflection. Wilhelm thought about the strange democracy of deception, how it could corrupt nobles like Count von Raben and workers like Dietrich equally. He thought about trust, how it could be exploited by those closest to us, yet how it remained necessary for any human connection. Mostly, he thought about the Autumn Harvest Festival and the promise of return. The factory in Essen was everything the Baron's estate wasn't. Soot-stained brick, smoking chimneys, the constant hammer of industrial progress. Wilhelm supervised the installation of telegraph lines that would connect office to warehouse to railway depot, creating a nervous system for commerce. The work was good, honest, technically challenging. Yet in quiet moments, testing connections or adjusting resistances, he found himself thinking of a garden in Prussia, of messages tapped out in careful practice, of connections that required no wire. Weeks passed in industrial rhythm. Wilhelm established the factory's communication network with his usual precision, trained operators with patient expertise, solved problems with quiet efficiency. The factory owner, impressed, offered him permanent employment at generous wages. Wilhelm declined politely. He was a traveler by nature, a connector of distant points, who never quite settled at either end. September arrived with cooler air and a letter, not a telegram, but handwritten pages in Anna's careful script. She wrote of the estate's recovery, Otto's growing confidence, Hofmeister's renewed energy. She wrote of her mother's continued improvement, of the garden's autumn abundance. At the bottom, in dots and dashes drawn with ink, she'd added a message. The harvest begins soon. Wilhelm stood at his boarding house window, watching the industrial city pulse with electrical life. Street lamps beginning to replace gas. Telegraph wires crossing like a web above the streets. This was the future, inevitable and powerful. Yet he thought of older rhythms, planting and harvest, trust and betrayal, the ancient dance of human connection that no amount of progress could replace. He began packing his tools. The Essen job was complete, and he'd received offers from Hamburg, Berlin, even Paris. But first, a promise to keep in Prussia. He sent a telegram to the estate, knowing Otto would receive it, that Anna would hear of it within the hour. Arriving for harvest, work continues after. Because that's what life was, Wilhelm understood now. Not the solution of a single mystery, but the continuous work of connection. Wire and copper, yes, but also trust and affection. The messages sent through glance and touch that no telegraph could carry. He was a craftsman of connection in all its forms, and some connections, once made, demanded maintenance not through duty, but through desire. The train to Prussia left at dawn. Wilhelm carried his tools, as always, but also something more, the knowledge that some journeys weren't about reaching new destinations, but about returning to where we're already known, already valued, already connected by invisible wires stronger than copper, more enduring than any message encoded in dots and dashes, yet carrying signals just as clear to those who knew how to receive them.